Alright, so today we're going to talk about lesson 1 and 2, and both of these lessons you've had before in Algebra 1, so they're going to seem like a review for you, but I want to make sure, because it's important for Unit 3, that we have these prerequisite skills. So we're going to go back through and review the information in both lesson 1 and 2 and talk about them so that we're all on the same page moving forward for the rest of the unit. So we're going to first talk about what nth roots are and rational exponents. So it's kind of like the beginning piece. Up at the top you guys have a title. So we're going to talk about this beginning piece first, and then we'll talk about properties in our part 2 of this packet. So a radical, so a couple things we want to point out is some vocab words. And vocab words are important because when we use them, we want to make sure that we understand what it is exactly that we are talking about, so we have a common language between us. So if you look at the next line underneath your group warm-up, it says a radical is an expression of the form. We're going to use your radical symbol and your inside value a, or n radical symbol and your inside value a. A couple pieces of information that are good to know is this is called your radical symbol. Your n, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is what we're going to call your index. And the number inside your radical symbol is what we call your radicand. Okay, so now that we have a couple vocab words down, so what is the radical symbol? What is this type of operation? How does it help us find certain things? And the easiest way to explain this is every operation in math has an opposite, right? If you add something, you can subtract it. If you multiply, you can divide it. You have operations that undo each other. And when you have your radical symbol or your radical, that type of operation, undoes your squares and your cubes and your fourth roots and your fourth powers. So your radicals undo the powers that you may have had before. So for example, if you had something like x squared, then your square root of x is what is going to undo your x squared. So if b is the, I'm going to fill this in according to our notes. If b is the square root of a, if you have something that looks like this, b squared is equal to a. So if we're using these same values here, we would have, we'll go back, we'll kind of disregard this a little bit. But if we look at our next value, if we talk about x cubed, we know that our cubed root of x is going to be the opposite. So we're going to talk about cube roots today. Same thing holds true if we have something to the x to the fourth power. We're going to talk about our fourth roots, because your fourth root would undo the power of 4. Therefore, if you have any x number or variable raised to the nth power, to undo the nth power, you would have what we call an nth root. So your nth root would undo your nth power, just like all the ones previously listed above. Okay, so we can talk about our nth root as n radical symbol a, where a is your real number and n is, like we talked about before, is called your index. Okay? So if you're raising something to a certain power, that power is going to go on that little ledge of your radical symbol. And that n power, let me say this up. You know this symbol too to be just like this, right? And if you usually see the symbol without a number, we're assuming that it's 2, right? Because if you had something like this, where you had the square root of 4, if there's no number there, we're going to assume it's 2. So we're looking at the square root of 4, which we all know to be 2. So long and the short of it is your powers and your roots are opposite operations of each other. They undo each other. Okay, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Okay, so let's zoom out here. There's a couple pieces of information that we want to look at first before we move forward. and that's in terms of our numbers of real nth roots. So this column right here is our index. Those are our index values. A is going to be our radicand. That's our inside number. And we kind of want to look at what that means in terms of odd and even, and what type of values those are, if the inside number is positive or negative, in terms of what type of solutions we get out, how many solutions we get out. So, in the very first one we're going to look at, we're going to assume that our index is odd. Odd means numbers between 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, so on and so forth. You guys know what odd numbers are. So if your index value is odd and your radicand, your inside number of your radical symbol, is any real number, then you will always have one solution, one answer to get out of it. So for example, if I'm looking at the cube root of 8, alright, cube root of 8, my index is obviously odd. 8 is any real number. This one works out really well for us. We know that the cube root of 8 is 2. Alright, here's another example. If we're looking at the cube root of -1, well, the cube root of -1, what type of, we need a number that multiplies itself by 3 to give us 8. So 2 multiplied by itself 3 times, so 2 times 2 times 2 gives us 8. -1, what number times 3 times itself 3 times gives us -1, and we know that that's going to be -1.